This is May 12th,
12th, right.
1989. And my name is Joe Todd, and this is an interview with Chester Jankowski.
Right.
We're in Wilmington, North Carolina, and you live in Illinois, right?
I live in East Belleville, Illinois.
Belleville, Illinois. Sir, where were you born?
I was born in East St. Louis, Illinois.
East St. Louis.
10/29/21.
10/29/21. Okay. Jankowski. You go through school in East St. Louis?
Right. I graduated in 1940. High school.
1940. Why'd you join the Navy?
Well, I got out of. I wasn't going to go anymore, do any more education. I decided I wanted to leave town. There was nothing there that was in hints of me to stay. So I told my mother I'd go up and enlist. And I was about 16. I went to the Naval recruiting stations, and four of us I got in the Navy that day.
Why'd you join the Navy over the Army or the Marines?
Well, I wanted to get away from the home. I mean, there's an air base right close to home, Scott Air Force Base, and I didn't want to go there. And I thought maybe I'd get better meals and cleaner conditions than being in this foxhole someplace. And war was really getting imminent, and I decided Navy would be the place for me if I could get in.
And you went to boot camp where?
Great Lakes.
Great Lakes.
We went there February 6th, 41.
Anything happened in boot camp?
Not really. It was cold. It was February, and we had 9 weeks of boot camp. Then I got home for 9 days. Then I went back, and we went to Detroit, Ford Motor Company, and we went to a machinist school, which lasted most of the summer. And then I left there, and I came back to outgoing unit at Great Lakes. I got transferred to San Francisco, and I went aboard the Oklahoma around the 15th of September, 1941.
When you first saw the Oklahoma, what'd you think?
Well, it was anchored in the bay. It really looked massive, you know. I've never been on a ship that big, although I always did like the water, like to swim and stuff like that. And I was just full of enthusiasm. You know, my life is opening up in front of me. And there was 14 fellows that came aboard that day.
And you were assigned to what division?
I was assigned to A Division.
A Division. Now, A Division is?
Auxiliaries.
Auxiliaries.
Like there was compressors, ice machines, the dynamos. They'd make the electricity with steam generators. They had turbines, with steam turbines that generated electricity for the ship use.
And where were your quarters of the ship?
Well, we at that time, most of the people had steaming quarters where they worked. They had lockers there and books and magazines, and they very seldom ventured much around the ship. But it was located in the bowels of the ship, below the magazines and handling rooms. Is about the lowest part of the ship, and there was about 16 people in that group that took care of the dynamo room. They had a forward and aft, and then we always walked to the uptake between the boiler stacks to the other one. And being on there, I was only on there less than 3 months when the war was declared.
What was your average day on the Oklahoma?
Average day?
Yeah.
Well, we had about 4 hours on and 8 hours off, and I was still more or less training for the job. In fact, I never had a fireman's rating at the time. I was still classified as a seaman, and was getting acquainted with the ship itself, where the laundry was, and where you got your food, and where you slept, and stuff as that. We still slept on the port side, and we had lockers up there, and I still remember the names of the people that went aboard there. Just all of them, but Heinrich and myself were lost that day.
So, were you aboard when the Oklahoma rammed the Arizona?
No, I came aboard, like I say, in September, around the 15th.
So, the Oklahoma came in December 6th for maneuvers. What maneuvers had she been on?
Well, we were with the battleships and destroyers. We was out on maneuvers, and we came in on a 6th, which was a Friday. No, it was a 5th. It was a Friday. It was a 5th that we came in, and we were getting alerts like submarines on its maneuver. And I'll never forget a guy by the name of Red Terhune from Chillicothe County, Missouri. He said they're going to come get us one of these days. He said we're out here looking for them, but they're going to come get us where we're at. But he never lived to see it, but it happened.
When you were on those maneuvers before you came in, what were you doing on the
Well, it's really vague to me right now because, you know, you're tied up downstairs and you're busy operating the equipment. You know, you can watch the steam gauges and temperatures and stuff as that and keep the place clean and being really doing on time.
What did you do for recreation on the Oklahoma?
Well, I was a pretty good softball player and a baseball player. But at that time, I was only on the Oklahoma less than 3 months, so I never got into athletics and read some. But that time passes, you know, and we did have movies on it when we was in port.
And where were your church services held?
Church?
Yeah.
I'm a Catholic. I'm a cradle Catholic.
Did you have Catholic services on the Oklahoma?
Yes.
And where were they held? No, where on the Oklahoma?
On the fantail.
On the fantail. Okay. So, what'd you do December 6th?
What's that?
What'd you do December 6th?
December 6th, that was a Saturday. I was on the port side where we were sleeping, and I never had a watch that night. I was away from my steaming station, and I was probably getting out of bed that morning on December 7th, you know. And
you go on leave?
No, I was aboard ship, and when the alarm went off, you know, we were told that we should take and pick up our not life jackets or our gas masks and go to our station, which was down below decks.
Now, is this general quarters?
Yeah. And I never got that far because the ship started turning over, and I just reversed, and I went up to port side.
Now, where were you?
I was on the port side second deck, aft, where I had to just walk out one flight on the ladder, and I would be on top side, where the like sheet metal area was, where they had cylinders of oxygen and settling secured to the bulkhead, and they were all coming loose and rolling down. I was sitting there, and at that time the Arizona blew up, and I kind of scooted down the side of the ship as she was rolling over, and I got in the water when I seen an opening and got on a rope, a line coming down from the Maryland, and climbed aboard her and went across the Maryland, and there was nobody on her I could see. And I went across there and got on the dredge line and went over to Fort Island.
Had that explosion, what did it sound like, the explosion?
Well, it was massive. I mean, it just a shock, you know. But when it started raining, you know, after she blew up, Arizona blew up, it was a rain of steel and stuff. And you couldn't hardly see it visibly because there was so much smoke and fire. There was so much oil on the ground, on the water, and they were trying to pick up people with boats. They were just covered with oil, and the oil was on fire. And you couldn't see the sky. Everything was smoked up. You could just hear it, more or less.
How about the explosion in the Oklahoma, the first one? What is
it was a loud thud, like, you know. But then there was more than one. There's probably 4 or 5. And they all came off the opposite side of where I was at.
When they called you in the quarters,
right.
What'd you hear?
Well, I could hear the guys that says, man your battle stations, you know. So I went to get my gas mask.
No, what exactly did it say? Do you remember?
What's that?
What exactly did it say? Do you remember?
No, I can't. Well, I know what everybody else says, but I couldn't say the same words.
Yeah. So how long when the first torpedo hit until the ship was over? How long did that take?
I would say 5 or 6 minutes.
So you swam to them. How do you swim through oil?
Well, there wasn't all that much oil between these two ships. It was around the other side where she was rolling over. Well, there was about, I'd say, 15 to 20 feet water between these two ships that she was rolling away from. They were tied together at one time, but they came loose. And when I got out through the water, I didn't have all that much oil on me in between the two ships. In fact, I had some on my clothes, but it wasn't that much.
And you got on deck the Maryland,
Right.
and you went over to Ford Island.
Ford Island, not over the dredge line, over to the dispensary they had over there, which was a kind of a square building with a court inside. They had a bomb dropped right in the middle of that courtyard of the dispensary. And we went over the swimming pool and we took a bath. It was an outdoor swimming pool. And that was about all the clothes I had.
What did you have on when you attack started?
Well, I had a pair of jeans and chambray shirt and a pair of shoes, socks.
After you took a bath, what'd you do?
I had to put the same clothes back on.
And what'd you do then?
Well, we stayed on Ford Island that night. And I remember the Filipino cook, they had sides of beef, which they were roasting outside at the far end of St. Luke, I think it was Luke Field. And they would be cutting off this beef was raw on one side and cooked on the other. And that night they had, everybody was carrying a gun. In fact, they shot some planes down. They came in the wrong direction, or they got confused or something because I think they were in California, were shooting after them and everything else.
You think the Japanese would invade?
At that time, it was hard to tell because after everything was over with, everything was calm, but everybody was trigger happy, although I did see a jet pilot that was, shot down. He had a pair of, a helmet like, with the side like we used to wear when we was in school, and they had white socks, no shoes, leather jacket, dark serge pants, and white shirt. And he was on the beach.
Was he alive?
No.
What ship did you go aboard after?
Well, I was Ford Island, and I went over to the receiving station, and I wandered around to about the 10th of December, and the guy was like you are there with a clipboard, took my name, and he assigned me to the Helena. But up to that time, we had to sign rosters where we was okay, or what ship we was off. If we went there, we like more or less mustered and wrote that we were well and not hurt or anything like that. And I guess they notified our parents.
What'd you do in the Helena?
Well, I was more or less in cleanup capacity because she received a torpedo in the engine room, and she lost 33 people. And we stayed in we went into the new dry dock, which wasn't prepared for us yet. They had to put submersible pumps over the side to pump her out because they didn't have the regular pumps hooked up. And it was the first ship in the new dry dock. And we stayed in the dry dock, and they just drug everything they could out, and they patched the ship up with a skin. Didn't even put the side keel on her. And we came back to States in January. We came back to States of Mare Island. And at that time, I was working in the scullery or around the kitchen or cleaning pots and pans on the way back.
I'm supposed to ask you about the fish and the bunk.
The fish? What are you trying to say?
Did Mr. Pratt say something about you putting fish in someone's bed or something?
No.
No, okay, that's someone else.
I was a pretty nice guy. I wouldn't do nothing like that.
What kind of trouble did you get into in the Oklahoma?
Really, I didn't get in any trouble. I was kind of a fresh kid, and trying to make an impression. And like I say, first time away from home, and I was doing things I wanted to do, and I was interested in my work, and I was going to make the Navy career at that time. And I was a gung-ho sailor.
Any other major incidents that you were in besides Pearl Harbor during the war?
Well, I did 6 years and 2 days in the Navy. I was in Casablanca on the next ship I was on, the Massachusetts, November 8th, 42. We fired 779 rounds of 16-inch ammunition, and I was in a magazine similar to the one that the Iowa, they had their fatalities at, where the powder blew up. I still said our powder at that time was 90 pounds, 6 bags to one shell, but they said 110. But the North Carolina was similar to it too. And then after we left there, we went to the South Pacific, and we operated with the battleships Washington, South Dakota, North Carolina, and the Massachusetts. And then I made the ship softball team, and we'd go over the island. We had steaks and beer and stuff as that. The division officer didn't like it, so he decided he's going to transfer me back to the new construction station. I got on a landing craft, an LSD-4, and then we went out and commenced 8 invasions like Kwajalein, Guam, Saipan, Leyte, Lingayen, the Philippines, Palau, Okinawa, Tapi, and New Guinea, New Ireland.
Are you on Massachusetts during this?
No, I was on a landing craft, LSD-4. I made the ship's softball team, and my division officer didn't like it, so he transferred me back to the States for new construction.
What does the landing craft do in those invasions?
Well, we carried troops. We worked with the 2nd Marine Division, the 3rd Marine Division on Guam, the 1st Marine Division at Palau. We would have tanks, we have gasoline, lighters, and we're more or less a support deal. And we had like light tanks, and they'd be in boats. The ship would submerge and they'd float off. And then during the raids, they'd bring these boats back, and we'd put screws on them or patch them up, you know. We had a dry dock, really, what it was. It's submerge, fill up, things that float in. We'd lock the door, pump the water out. And I was an oil king on that ship. And I was taking care of all the fresh water and the ballast, pumping oil from storage to service, fueling the ship, taking care of the demulsified equipment to take the oil out of the boiler water.
What was the worst invasion that you made on that ship?
I would say the time we spent in Okinawa. We spent 91 days there. We had over 400 air raids, and I mean, we never slept at night. I mean, they had a picket line around Okinawa, and I can't say, but there were hundreds of ships were damaged. And at that time, we was one of the largest ships in the area. We had to move every night. We made smoke, chemical smoke. We had smoke generators, and you could even see the moon for the chemical smoke we made. And you could hear these planes driving. You could hear them, and you knew what kind of plane they were because they had a different sound than ours. We was in Okinawa 91 days. We went in April 1, 45, which was Easter Sunday, and left there the 1st of July, 45.
Whenever you looked out and saw the upturned hull of the Oklahoma, what was your reaction?
How many people could get off? Which position she was on? I know it was almost an impossibility for people to get off where the air pressure equals the water. And everybody, see, I was on there with, I went on about 14 people. Like I say, Heinrich and myself, the only 2 got off. There was a George Jarding, there was a Herbert Jacobson, there was a Clayton Iverson. I can go out to Pearl Harbor and mark their names off on the stone they have over there. And these guys, I got Jacobson on one side and Jarding on the other, and Jankowski sits in the middle. Just an active gun alive.
Whenever anyone mentions the Oklahoma today, what's your reaction?
Well, the reaction is, if she was a good ship, she had reciprocating engines, and she had the old Navy. There was no reserve people on it. There was all regular Navy. They had the old way of feeding, where they carried food to your table instead of having lines, you know. They carried stuff in tureens like soup. And the mess cooks, they bought the salt and pepper and the ketchup and stuff, and they served so many people. And it was regular Navy, and they were real salts. I mean, they were not educated away from the Navy, they were educated in the Navy.
Could you compare the crew of the Oklahoma with the crew of the Massachusetts? How would the two crews compare?
Well, getting back to Oklahoma, she was a regular Navy ship. Massachusetts was getting some people transferred there from regular Navy, and she was picking up a lot of officers and people that were reservists. And like I said, Massachusetts had 2,300 people, and Oklahoma had about 1,320.
Well, I think we have a good interview.
Thank you.
Thank you.